Because you see what we're up against here? And we're losing many good people. Many, many good people. Another thing that the anti-Yeshua missionaries don't tell us, the way they make it sound is incredible. I mean, it's just incredible. The way they make it sound is that us Christians, of course, we're not. None of us in this room would identify. We're Torah-keeping Israelites from either the returning house of Ephraim or Yehudah.
Yeah.
But they say, you Christians, all you do is, and this Messiah is this idea that the Messiah is a hidden concept. That's a Christian thing. That's, in other words, the fact that the Brit Hadashah or the New Covenant is esoteric and is written on deep levels of Hebraic interpretation, when they themselves do the same thing, and they say to us, so in other words, according to the Brit Hadashah, the Moshiach is a hidden concept. Isn't that what we've just been saying? To understand the truth of Moshiach, we have to use all 4 levels of Hebraic interpretation. Isn't that what we just said? And so, when we do it, the anti-missionary says, that's not scriptural. In the Tanakh, the Mashiach is evident. The Mashiach is plain. That's a lie. Listen, in both covenants, the idea and the principle of Moshiach is a hidden concept. Nowhere in the Tanakh does it say Yeshua HaNotzri will be born in Bethlehem in 4 CE. Show up on the hills of Bethlehem lest you miss his birth. It doesn't say that. So listen, what the anti-missionary doesn't tell you, now there are little pieces of the puzzle, are there not? Micah has a piece of the puzzle. Yeshayahu has a piece of the puzzle. Habakkuk has a piece of the puzzle. Yirmiyahu has a piece of the puzzle. And it's up to you and I as students, 1 Timothy 2:15, to rightly divide the word of truth. Study to show ourselves approved unto Yahweh, a workman who need not be ashamed, rightfully dividing the word of truth. So it is up to you and I to take the pieces from Yirmiyahu and Yeshayahu and apply all the levels of Pardes, or the 4 basic levels of Hebraic interpretation, and put all the pieces together. Because here's the deception. They say that in the Tanakh it's plain. Of course they have to say that. Of course they have to say that. Because they cannot allow us to use what? Pardes. Because as soon as they admit that to understand Mashiach in Tanakh, you must use Pardes, then to understand Mashiach in Brit Hadashah, you also must use Pardes. Let's make it simple. You can never understand anything about Moshiach, listen, in either covenant without dropping down to deeper levels of Hebraic interpretation. Amen?
Amen.
So, in other words, it's not just us as Messianics who drop down to the Hebraic levels of interpretation. They do the same thing. And Mashiach is a hidden concept. What does Malachi 3 and 6 teach us? Malachi 3 and 6. I am Yahweh, I change not. Therefore the sons of Yaakov are not consumed. Correct? Yeah. Well, if Yahweh doesn't change, and we really believe that he doesn't change, then he revealed Moshiach in the esoteric, the mystical, the hidden, even as he does in the Brit Hadashah. Okay? So Yahweh doesn't change. So what the anti-missionary wants you to think is, in the Tanakh, when the real Messiah comes, of course, the real Messiah not being Yeshua, when the real Mashiach comes, it'll be plainly revealed. There'll be no mysteries. There'll be no parables. He won't be teaching allegory. He won't be teaching in Midrash. He won't be expounding on the word of Yahweh in Remez. He will just do everything in the simple, in the plain, in the Pashat. Well, pardon me, that Mashiach will never come. Why? Because Mashiach was not revealed plainly in either covenant. And they want you to feel guilty that you have to drop down to the lowest levels of Hebraic, because you won't see Yeshua in the literal primary with your own eyes. You won't see Yeshua. So the Brit Chadashah has to get esoteric and so you can't have the real Messiah. That's what the anti-missionary says. You can't have the real Messiah, because when the real Messiah comes, it'll be plain as day. Everybody will know his name. He'll do nothing in secret. And didn't we read in the Brit Chadashah? Yeshua did things in secret. Yeshua did miracles in secret. Yeshua did healings in secret. Yeshua did cures and miraculous, wondrous works in secret. Yes. And he goes, shh. Now you want to be my Talmud? Don't tell anybody. Right? Amen. And the Sunday system says, how many people have you witnessed to this week? That's right. Yeshua said, if you want to be my disciple, don't tell anybody. Just tell them the good news, but don't get deep. Do like Miriam, not the mother of God, but the mother of Yeshua. Ponder these things in your heart. Ponder, ponder, ponder. Amen. Amen. So Moshiach in neither covenant is ever revealed in the literal or pashat. I shouldn't say never, but very, very, it is the exception rather than the rule. Are you upset yet? You should be. The anti-missionary uses pardes, doesn't allow you to use it, speaks of the coming of Moshiach, claiming that in the Tanakh it's plain as day. Well, if it was plain as day, then why didn't the whole world accept it? But that the Yeshua of the Brit Chadashah cannot be the Messiah because it's not plain as day. We've got to drop down to these lower levels of Hebraic interpretation. No, the Mashiach has always been a hidden, not revealed, but a submerged, which you got to study and try to draw these things out. Make sense? What does this mean? Yeah? So, we got to put you guys in basic training. They bring you down to Miami Beach for about a month of vocal exercises. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Hallelujah. Okay, so it is the exception and not the rule to see Moshiach revealed. For instance, in Isaiah 9:6, the government, Yeshayahu 9:7, the government will be upon his shoulders, upon the throne of David, to rule and establish it with righteousness. From henceforth, even the zeal of Yahweh of hosts shall be wonderful. Everybody acknowledges that Yeshayahu 9:7 is a messianic scripture. The king will rule on David's throne, on Kiseh David. The problem is, in Yeshayahu 9:6, it tells you that the king is the son is the father is the son, and then it says, a virgin will give birth. A virgin, what virgin? There are 1 million virgins in Israel. Which virgin are you talking about? Which version? Which version of the virgin? You Christians, and of course we're not Christians, we're returning Israelites. You Christians have to jump down to all these weird levels of Hebraic interpretation because you admit the Brit Chadashah makes no sense in its primary application. But with us rabbis and us Jewish traditional Jews, it was never so. When the Mashiach comes, it'll be plain, it'll be clear, there'll be no mysteries, there'll be no allegories, there'll be no midrash. Balogna. Do you know how to say balogna? No mysteries, huh? And then they say, well, when the Mashiach comes, he'll be called Emmanuel. And then after all, Emmanuel hasn't come. What you say, your Messiah, what's his name? The guy you claim to be the Messiah, what's his name? Yeshua? Well, his name isn't Emmanuel. Next case. You see what you're up against? Now, Emmanuel means Yahweh with us through the Messiah, which is exactly what Yeshua came to do and reveal, that it was Yahweh with us through the Mashiach. Make sense? So the traditional Jew says, it's plain as day. We don't need pardes, the levels of Hebraic interpretation, and yet it just says Emmanuel. And so they say, well, we want to take it literally. Fine, so you'll miss the Messiah. If you're waiting for the Mashiach, named Emmanuel, to come, you might as well be waiting for the Long Island Railroad to show up on time. Those of you from New York will appreciate that. Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Hallelujah.
Okay, let's move on. So there's a disingenuousness here. There's a dishonesty here. They're doing, but they won't let you do it. Another example, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit here. Matityahu 2 says, "Thus it was fulfilled, which was spoken by the Nevi, out of Egypt I did call him to be my son." And then the traditional Jew says, what? In Hosea 11:1 it says, Israel was called out of Egypt, the nation, not the Mashiach. The nation was called out of Egypt to be my son, and it can't be Yeshua, because in Hosea 11:2 it says, "And yet he burned incense to Baal." So are you Christians telling us that Yahweh took his son Yahshua out of Egypt and then taught him how to burn incense to another Elohim? Well, yeah, Rabbi, but my pastor told me that Yeshua fulfilled the prophecy of Hosea. He told me that it was prophesied by Hosea that the Messiah would come out of Egypt as a young child. Doesn't say that. It does not say that. Yet Matthew says it says that. Now what do? Pray the rosary? That's not going to work. Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Now, if Yeshua is Yahweh's son, which he is, and if the nation of Israel came out of Egypt, which they did, then Matityahu must have had the license and the authority from Yahweh to go to a deeper level of Hebraic interpretation, such as remez, hint, or even maybe, in this case, sod, mystery, secret, and say, yes, when you recognize that the nation came out of Egypt in the literal pashat, you can jump down to the ultimate revelation or the mystery that one day Yahweh would send his son, and his son would come out of Egypt, because we jump down to the esoteric and the mystical revelation that Yahweh had for us. Tov? No. But if we stick only to the literal pashat, we're out of business. We're out of business. And the anti-missionary has us by the throat. So we must use the four levels of Hebraic interpretation, or else basically we have no Brit Chadashah. We have none. If you remove the four levels of Hebraic interpretation, we do not have a Brit Chadashah. But here's the good news. Neither do the traditional Jews have the Tanakh. Because if you remove pardes from them, they don't even have the Tanakh. They're left without a Tanakh. And they're left without what else? A Mashiach. They have no Mashiach. Amen? Amen. Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Hallelujah.
Now there's another factor in the anti-Yeshua missionary stealing our faith, and we find that based on a violation of Deuteronomy 19:15. Devarim 19:15 says, all Torah must be verified, all principles, all laws, all chukim, all mishpatim, all ordinances, accusations, whatever, must be verified by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Right? You cannot establish any matter in the earth without the verification of how many? 2 or 3 witnesses. Traditional Judaism and the anti-missionaries are in violation of this as well. How so? Listen to this. According to the anti-missionaries, the Septuagint, known as the LXX, the Septuagint, which is the basis of the Brit Chadashah, is, according to the anti-missionaries, is an unreliable document. Can't rely on it. It's unreliable. Well, of course they're going to say that. Because without the LXX, there is no Brit Chadashah. So first, they don't allow you to use the same laws of interpretation that they themselves use. Second, they try to tell you their Mashiach will be plainly revealed when nowhere in either covenant is Mashiach revealed other than by revelation and esoteric knowledge and revelation. Amen? Then they don't have 3 witnesses to establish their cause. What do I mean? The anti-missionary accusation goes like this. Don't you guys know? Aren't you aware of the fact that you cannot rely on the Brit Hadashah? You guys are so... We feel sorry for you. You're misled. You're in a cult. Every one of you, you're in a cult. We feel sorry. Don't you know that the entire Brit Hadashah is based on a faulty translation of the Tanakh? Don't you know that? Now, why do you think they would do this? Because if you undermine the validity of the Septuagint, you have no Brit Hadashah. You're gone. There's nothing left. Most of the quotations of Matityahu, Yochanan, Yaakov, Yehuda come from the LXX, from the Septuagint. You with me? Do you know why the writers of the Brit Hadashah didn't use the Masoretic text? Does anyone know why?
Didn't have it yet.
Thank you, Danny. Nothing like a voice of Israel to straighten us out. Thank you. Because it didn't exist. But wait a second. So there's a profit motive. If they can get me, if I'm Jewish and I want my daughter out of this Messiah stuff, and I pay an anti-missionary $30,000, they'll get the job done. Even if they got to kidnap my daughter to get the job done. You're dealing with some very unscrupulous individuals. By and large. By and large. I don't know their heart. I can't judge them individually. I'm talking about their tactics, their methods. Make sense? Yes. So they say that if the Brit Hadashah was reliable, the writers of the Brit Hadashah would have known to use the Masoretic. They would have known better, and they would have used the Masoretic text. So I have a problem with that. There was no Masoretic text. But shh, what you don't know will kill you. But never let their agenda get in the way of truth. See, they have an agenda. And it's not a truthful agenda. It is to steal you away from the gift of eternal life that is in the Messiah Yeshua. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. What is the truth? Listen to this. Not only is the LXX Septuagint an accurate translation, not only used by all the writers of the Brit Hadashah with the full authority of heaven, Father, Son, and Spirit, the Echad of the compound unity of heaven, not only that, it was translated word for word by 70, not 1, not 40, not 30, 70 leading rabbis. Not only leading rabbis, but rabbis that were commissioned by the Kohen HaGadol from Jerusalem and sent on a mission, and not had to be checked out. Their resume had to be examined. Their credentials had to be verified, and they had to see the validity of their scholarship before they were ever sent to Alexandria, Egypt. It wasn't 70 scholars in Alexandria, Egypt, who decided to get together and come up with an alternative Greek translation to the established Hebrew scriptures. These 70 came from Jerusalem, not from the cities of the Nile. These 70s came from Jerusalem, not from Havana Pequeña, or from Cuba,
Or from Moscow.
or from Moscow.
Or even from Tel Aviv.
They came from direct commission of the high priest, and he took, if he took the Torah and the Tanakh seriously, he commissioned 70 serious scholars. And the entire Brit Hadashah is based on the scholarship of these 70 scholars. The LXX, the Septuagint.
Were they Jews?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Yes, they were, exactly.
Okay.
They were, exactly. They were Jews. But more than that, listen to this. So now, in order to erase the historical validity, by the way, at the time of Yeshua, the LXX was unquestioned as a legitimate translation, Greek translation of the Hebrew. It was not even questioned. There was no debate. There was no debate. When do you think the debate started over the validity of the LXX? Once Yeshua had died and risen from the dead, oh, it's not reliable. Oh, no one knows for sure. Oh, it's not really kosher. But before Yeshua lived his life, before he rose from the dead, no one even thought to question the validity of 70 scholars being sent from Jerusalem by the Kohen Hagadol. Those are the facts. But wait a second. Brothers and sisters, the deception does not stop there. They want to take you away from believing Yeshua. You're a threat to them. You veil your head. You wear tzitzit. You're returning to Torah. You're coming back to the full faith as it was once for all delivered to the Kadoshim. You are a threat. So the deception will go even deeper. Now what do they do now? Now they insist, here's a new one. Ready? How many have ever heard of the Masoretic text? The Masoretic. Where do we get the word Masoretic? Handed down or traditional. Traditionally handed down. Well, they claim that the Masoretic text in your home was not really compiled in the Middle Ages by some rabbis in the Galut, in the exile. Rather, now listen to this, you ready? Don't laugh now, please. Hold your laughter. It was written back in the time of the Judeans of the first century as they received it directly from Ezra the scribe. Okay? You're not dealing with nice people. I don't care how long their tzitzit are. They use deception as a main tool of doing what they do. And the dangerous thing is, as I said earlier, they know the Brit Chadashah better than you and I do. Much better. Now what do? We better know our little bit of history, and we better know how to defend our faith. And we better know how to give an answer to every man who asks us for the reason of the hope that lies within us. Because I'm not holier than thou. It is as easy for me to fall, and I am targeted, how much more? All right? And I've seen men more educated, more skilled, fall, shot leaders, founders of this movement. There are people at this conference, as I said earlier. I booked them into this conference. And between the time I booked them and now, I'm hearing things that I have to verify. They no longer believe in the full counsel of Scripture. Be careful. Go into the workshop with your antennas up, full of the Ruach, with a keen sense of discernment. Because I can't control people's hearts and minds. I mean, I've been accused of a lot of things, including being a control freak. But I'm not that much in control. I can't control people's hearts and minds. I can barely control my own shoes in the morning. Zipping those shoes up. That's my next project. So I can't control what people think and teach and how they shift their doctrines between the time they're scheduled to teach and between the time they actually get to teach. Okay? Baruch Hashem Yahweh. So what do the traditional Jews do? They say that the Masoretic text that you have in your home, Stone Edition, was recorded in the first century by Judeans, but that it was received by direct passing down from this Ezra who appears in the Word of Yahweh. Now, if you believe that, there's a couple of bridges I have for sale that I'd like you to see me about later on. It is historically documented, brothers and sisters, that the Masoretic text was compiled by medieval rabbis getting together, redacting and redacting the Word of Yahweh, changing it, taking the name of Yahweh in the Word of Yahweh 134 times, removing it and putting in the title of Adonai. They took the traditional rendition of Psalm 22:16, Ka'aru yadai v'raglai, they have pierced my hands and my feet, and changed the vav to a Yud, so Ka'aru, which means pierced, now appears in the Masoretic text as Ka'ari, or as a lion. They left the word intact, they changed the Vav to a Yud by changing, and a Vav and a Yud are confusing, they look pretty similar. Sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference between a Vav and a Yud. Amen? And so by changing a Vav to a Yud, they made pierced to a lion, and then the traditional handed down text says, the Masoretic text says, it doesn't say pierced my hands and feet, it says like a lion. Sure it does. After your scribes got done erasing, turning the Vav into the Yud, sure it looks like a lion. And so they tell, and then they say, well, everybody that's Jewish knows that it's like a lion. Psalm 22:16 doesn't say pierced, it says lion. Everybody knows. And you poor fool Christians, well, you're just so blind, the blind following the blind, that you need us to show you the way. Really? Really? Well, the truth of the matter is, we will allow the anti-missionaries to show us the way away from Yeshua when they admit that Ezra the scribe was not the editor of the Masoretic text. Get this down in your kishkis. Get this deep down in your kishkis. Ezra the scribe was not the editor of the Masoretic text. It was rabbis who dacted and redacted the text and produced a perversion. So all these disparaging statements and accusations against the LXX, the Septuagint, is for one main reason. Again, listen, to undermine the validity and integrity of the Brit Hadashah. Because if you believe that the Septuagint is a faulty version, you have no Brit Hadashah. You don't need the King James, NIV, NASB. You can make up your own for it. It doesn't matter. Destroy the validity of the Septuagint, and the veracity of the Brit Hadashah falls apart. Make sense? Yes. And there's an all-out attack on the LXX. But isn't it interesting? The attacks didn't start till Yeshua showed up. What Jew in their right mind would question the authority and scholarship of 70 leading elders and scholars on commission from the Kohen HaGadol? No one would even question their authority or their scholarship. Until Yeshua did what he did, died for our sins, rose from the dead. Then all of a sudden, this accusation against the LXX kicked into gear. The Septuagint. Amen. But see, the attack against the Septuagint is without warrant. Because we know that Yeshua himself used the LXX. We know that. Not only that, the LXX Septuagint appears 950 years before the Masoretic text even shows up. Are you with me? Yeshua used the LXX, and I document that here in my book from Grant Jones, Septuagint, and so forth. So, the Septuagint of the first century was based on a Hebrew manuscript from somewhere, wouldn't you agree? You don't get a Greek translation of the Hebrew without the original Hebrew. So where is that original Hebrew? Now there's your Masoretic text. The Masoretic text is the one that Yeshua had in his possession, that the Septuagint was derived from. There's the Masoretic text. Not the one put together and doctored and redacted and edited by the rabbis of the Middle Ages. You ask any rabbi who's honest, okay, anyone who's willing to be honest, when was the Masoretic text put together? You know what they'll tell you? If they're not an anti-missionary. That's a big if. They'll tell you it was put together in the 700s. So what is more reliable? The Septuagint, based on the original Hebrew at the time of Yeshua, or something the rabbis put together that's 950 years older, at least 950 years older than the Septuagint. I mean, the Septuagint 950 years older than the Hebrew. What's more reliable? Obviously. Obviously, the Hebrew on which the Septuagint was based. Okay? So, we talk about 2 or 3 witnesses. Where are the 3 witnesses? How many witnesses in Devarim 19:15? If I cannot produce 3 witnesses for this workshop, don't listen to a word I say. I must be able to verify the word of Yahweh by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Witness number 1 that the Brit Hadashah is reliable is the superior LXX. Now that's a pretty radical statement. To claim that the LXX is a superior translation to the Masoretic, but it is. Because Yeshua used it, the Talmudim used it, and we ought to know that our Brit Hadashah is undergirded by a truthful translation taken from the Hebrew, and the Hebrew that the Greek was taken from in approximately 130 CE. Now there's your Masoretic, but it didn't come from Ezra. So we don't know where that is today, where the text is today. Amen. So how many witnesses do we need to establish a matter? Credible. Not just witnesses, credible witnesses. So we have the testimony of the Greek Septuagint to the validity of the Brit Hadashah. Then we also have the testimony of the original Hebrew. Okay? Did the Septuagint come out of thin air?
No.
No. It was copied from the original Hebrew. So we have the original Hebrew as first testimony. We have the existing Septuagint as the second testimony. Now here is a very interesting and a very credible testimony. Ready? How many have ever heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls? Yes. The Dead Sea Scrolls. Incredible things were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. For instance, let me just give you a few examples. In the Song of Moshe, Devarim 32:43, the so-called inspired Masoretic text that allegedly was written by and compiled and edited by who? By Ezra. Well, apparently in Devarim 32:43, there is something missing in the Song of Moshe. But listen to this: both the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls found in Qumran have the missing part of the Song of Moshe in Devarim 32:43. Okay. Now listen to this. Let's take another example. These are just examples. In Isaiah 53, and I believe it is, let's just make sure here. Okay, verse 11, yes. But now this is fascinating. Ready? Because we're going to go for a ride here. Yeshayahu 53:11. There's a missing word in the Masoretic, and that means that, sadly, most of our Bibles that we have are based on the Masoretic. Did you know that? Most of the Tanakh that we have in our English is based on the Masoretic. Did you know that? It is not based on the Septuagint or the Dead Sea Scrolls. How many witnesses do we need to establish a matter? 2 or 3. The Masoretic is its own witness. The Masoretic testifies of itself. More than that, it is the official redacted text of the anti-missionary movement. And yet, every one of our Bibles in the Tanakh is based on the Masoretic text. But the truth is, the real Masoretic text is the one the Septuagint was taken from, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were hidden at the time of Yeshua, confirm in more places than not the validity of the Septuagint and not the traditional rabbinic Masoretic text. In other words, when the rabbis say Psalm 22:16, it is not they have pierced my hands and my feet, but like a lion they are at my hands and my feet. It testifies of itself. And Yeshua said, if I testify of myself, then you do not receive my witness. But the Torah testifies about me, and my Father testifies about me, and you ought to receive my witness, if not for my own witness, then for the works which I have done in the Father's name. So Yeshua didn't show up with himself as the witness. And the entire anti-missionary crowd wants you and I to believe them. Why? Because they're Jewish, and they look more Jewish, and they know more Hebrew, and they're just here longer. And the women know how to bake better gefilte fish than you do. So after all, if they know how to make better matzo ball soup than you, they must know what they're talking about. Get it? So the Masoretic goes, here I am. I bear witness of myself. Who authorized this witness? Oh, just some medieval rabbis. You mean the ones that hated Yeshua? Yeah, the ones that hated Yeshua. Oh, the one that hated Yahweh? Rabbi, how can you say that? They love